It always begins so quietly, almost too quietly to notice. One little decision, one skipped step, you tell yourself, I'll do it tomorrow. And of course, that sounds harmless. It sounds rational. You had a long day, you've been busy, surely you deserve a break. So you leave that call unmade, that chapter unread, that workout undone, that opportunity unanswered. And in that moment, you don't realize you've just negotiated away a piece of your future for a moment of ease. Neglect never seems like a threat in the beginning. It doesn't show up with horns and a red flag. It shows up with softness, disguised as comfort, wearing the mask of just this once. But here's what most people don't understand. The little things we ignore today become the big burdens we carry tomorrow. You don't get overweight from one bad meal. You don't lose your job from one day of laziness. You don't go broke from skipping one investment. But it's never just one time. That's the trap. Neglect operates through repetition. Now the scary part is this. Neglect has a compounding effect. Just like discipline compounds into success, neglect compounds into disaster. It builds up silently, like rust on the soul. You don't feel it at first. You think you're still okay. You think you're still in control. And then one day you wake up and you're behind. Behind on your goals, behind on your dreams, behind on your potential. And you wonder, how did this happen? It happened through daily decisions, not the big, dramatic ones, the small, seemingly insignificant ones that stacked on top of each other until they formed a wall between you and who you could have become. And now that wall feels too high to climb, too thick to break through, but it was never built overnight. It was built one excuse at a time. Neglect is the great thief that doesn't even need to break in. You leave the door open for it. Every time you choose comfort over growth, silence over action, distraction over purpose, you're rolling out the red carpet for it to walk right in. And once it's there, it doesn't just sit quietly, it multiplies. It affects your confidence, your energy, your habits. Suddenly, you stop believing in yourself, not because you aren't capable, but because you haven't been showing up. You see, one of the most dangerous lies you can tell yourself is, it's no big deal. Because when enough of those pile up, your life becomes a big deal you don't recognize anymore. And the truth is, most people don't ruin their lives by making one giant mistake. They ruin their lives by making hundreds of tiny ones they never corrected. You miss one opportunity to learn, and you don't notice. You skip one step of preparation, and you feel no difference. You put off one responsibility, and nothing crashes down. But what you're really doing is practicing. Practicing the habit of avoidance, practicing how to quit on yourself in quiet ways, and the more you practice that, the better you get at it. Neglect doesn't just steal your time, it steals your identity, because each time you choose it, you're becoming someone else. You're no longer the person who finishes what they start. You're no longer the person who keeps promises to themselves. You're now the person who bends their standards and lowers their vision. And when you do that long enough, it's not just your life that suffers. Your mindset begins to shift. Your belief begins to shrink. Your ambition begins to fade. There's something else that happens too. As you continue to neglect the important areas of life, you begin to justify it. You create stories to defend your inaction. It wasn't the right time. I didn't feel ready. It probably wouldn't have worked anyway. And soon, your stories become your truth. But that truth is built on a shaky foundation, and it can never support a meaningful future. neglect thrives in the shadows. It thrives when there is no urgency. That's why people often wait for a crisis to wake them up. A health scare, a financial breakdown, a relationship falling apart. Suddenly, they snap into action. But by then, they're not building a future, they're trying to repair the past. And it's much harder to fix damage than it is to prevent it. What's tragic is that the people who suffer from neglect the most often don't know it's happening until it's too late. They look around at their life and think the world is against them. They blame luck, timing, circumstances, even other people. But the truth is much simpler and much harder to accept. They neglected what mattered when it was small, and now it has grown into something they can't ignore. So the real question becomes, what are you neglecting right now that may not hurt today, but will cost you dearly tomorrow? What small task, what delayed goal, what overlooked responsibility is quietly piling up? Because your future is not something you step into, it's something you build. And what you neglect today is the foundation you're laying for what's to come. Discipline is the cure for regret. There's something powerful about the idea of discipline. Not the kind that others impose on you, but the kind you develop for yourself, self-discipline, personal responsibility. That inner voice that says, I could take it easy, but I won't, not today. And yet, most people run from it. They treat discipline like it's a burden, like it's a punishment. They confuse it with restriction, when in truth, it's the foundation of freedom. The person who is disciplined controls their life. The one who avoids discipline will one day be controlled by their consequences. You see, the reason discipline feels heavy is because it is. It demands something from you. It asks you to sacrifice the present for the sake of the future. But here's the secret, so does regret. And while discipline weighs ounces, regret weighs tons. You either carry the small discomfort of doing what's right today, or you bear the heavy weight of wishing you had done it when it mattered. There's no neutral ground. Life doesn't let you escape the cost. You just get to choose when you pay it. The truth is, the most successful people aren't the ones who love doing hard things. They're the ones who do them anyway. They understand that feelings are not the driver discipline is. You won't always feel motivated. You won't always feel excited. You won't always feel ready. And if you wait until you do, you'll be waiting for the rest of your life. Discipline steps in when motivation walks out. It says, I don't feel like it, but I'll do it anyway. That's the muscle you build. And the more you use it, the stronger it gets. Now, some people avoid discipline because they believe it takes the fun out of life. But let's look a little closer. Is it really fun to live paycheck to paycheck? Is it fun to feel tired, unfocused, undisciplined, and disappointed in yourself every night? Is it fun to wake up with anxiety because you've been procrastinating on something important? The truth is, that kind of life isn't free at all. It's a trap, it's a cycle, and the only way to break it is through discipline. It's not about living a joyless life. It's about choosing a deeper kind of joy, the joy of peace, purpose, and progress. Discipline builds trust with yourself. Every time you follow through on what you said you would do, you prove to yourself that your word means something, that you're reliable, that you're strong, and something powerful happens when you trust yourself. You begin to believe that you can handle anything. Confidence doesn't come from talent. It comes from integrity. It comes from keeping promises to yourself when no one else is watching. That's where real strength is formed. There's another thing discipline gives you. It gives you time. When you live without structure, your days disappear. You're always reacting, always catching up, always feeling like you're behind. But when you're disciplined, you plan, you prepare, you execute, and suddenly you have margin. You have space to think, space to grow, space to breathe. People think discipline restricts your time, but in reality, it multiplies it. The undisciplined life is chaotic. The disciplined life is strategic. One of the greatest misunderstandings is that discipline is something you're born with. That some people are just naturally driven and others aren't, but that's not true. Discipline is not a trait, it's a choice. And like all choices, it gets easier the more you make it. The first time you wake up early, it's tough. The first time you say no to something unhealthy, it feels like a loss, but after a while, it becomes who you are. Discipline becomes your identity. You don't do hard things. You are someone who does hard things. That shift is everything. People who avoid discipline often wait for a crisis to force them into change. They wait until their health is in danger, their finances are in ruin, their relationships are strained. Then they say, I have to get serious now. But what if you didn't wait? What if you treated discipline like a gift instead of a punishment? What if you made decisions from wisdom instead of desperation? That's what separates the ones who live intentionally from the ones who live reactively. Here's another truth. Discipline protects your dreams. Every vision you have for your future depends on your ability to manage yourself. Talent might get you noticed, but discipline will keep you going. Passion might get you started, but discipline will carry you through the seasons where nothing feels exciting. Goals are wonderful, but without discipline, they're just wishful thinking. It's the daily grind, the ordinary repetition, the choice to stay consistent that turns ambition into achievement. Think of the things in life that truly matter: your health, your relationships, your finances, your growth. Every single one of them requires daily care. You can't just show up once and expect results. You can't expect a meaningful life from occasional effort. Discipline is what takes your values and translates them into action. It's not what you say you care about. It's what you're willing to suffer for day after day. That's how you build a life that lasts. Most people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can do in a year with discipline. One day of good decisions might not change your life, but 1 year of them absolutely will. It's not about perfection. It's about direction. You don't need to be flawless. You need to be consistent. Miss a day, start again. Fall short, get back up. It's not about never failing. It's about never quitting on the process. Because the person who sticks with discipline will always outperform the person who waits for inspiration. Your future is hidden in your daily routine. The truth about the future is that it doesn't just show up. It doesn't arrive with a loud announcement or a lucky break. It's not something you stumble into by accident. It's hidden, disguised, tucked away in the small decisions you make every day. Your future is not some distant mystery waiting to unfold. It's already taking shape silently through your daily routine. What you do consistently, how you think, what you allow, and what you avoid, all of it is writing the script of your life before you ever reach the final chapter. If someone really wants to know where their life is going, they don't need to consult a fortune teller or read a book on predictions. All they need to do is open up their calendar and their habits, What time are they waking up? How much time are they wasting? What do their mornings look like? Are they feeding their mind or scrolling endlessly? Are they learning, growing, building? Or just floating, distracted, and reacting to everything around them? Because the future is not about intentions. It's not about what you say you're going to do someday. It's about what you do every day. You can have the greatest goals in the world, but if they aren't backed by daily effort, they stay locked in your imagination. A vision without a routine is just a fantasy. It might excite you for a moment, but it won't move you forward. On the other hand, a small, disciplined routine might not feel glamorous, but it works like compound interest. Quietly, steadily, it changes everything. There's a simple law of life that most people ignore. Your life becomes what you repeatedly do. Excellence isn't one big heroic act, it's a habit. Failure isn't one big collapse, it's a habit. You don't fall behind in one day. You fall behind little by little every time you choose comfort over discipline, distraction over focus, excuse over effort. These small decisions might not look important at the time, but that's the trick. They always seem small until they shape who you become. People often ask, "How do I change my life?" And they expect some dramatic answer, but the truth is quiet. You change your life by changing your routine. You change your routine by changing your priorities. You change your priorities by deciding who you want to become. And then you prove that decision through action, again and again. Not by making one big leap, but by showing up every day, even when it's hard, even when it's boring, even when no one else notices. Your daily routine is your preparation. Life doesn't reward the person who says, "I'll be ready when the opportunity comes." Life rewards the person who is ready when the opportunity comes. And readiness doesn't happen overnight. It's built in the early mornings, in the focused hours, in the time spent when everyone else is asleep or distracted. That's where you sharpen your edge. That's where you earn your confidence. That's where you separate yourself, not by talent, but by consistency. Now, routines aren't just about checking boxes. They're about reinforcing identity. Every time you follow through, you tell yourself, "This is who I am." When you read every morning, you become someone who values growth. When you train every day, you become someone who honors their body. When you plan your week, you become someone who respects their time. These aren't just habits, they're declarations of character. And character is what determines whether your future will rise or fall. Of course, routines aren't always exciting. That's why so many people abandon them. They think success should feel dramatic, like a movie montage full of energy and emotion. But real success looks more like repetition. It looks like doing the same thing again and again, long after the mood has faded. It looks like writing when you don't feel creative, practicing when you don't feel motivated, and pushing forward when you feel stuck. That's the kind of routine that builds something meaningful. The other thing about routines is that they work whether you believe in them or not. If you repeat bad habits every day, if you wake up late, skip responsibilities, stay distracted, and never follow through, you will still get a result. It just won't be the result you want. You'll drift, decline, and eventually wonder why your life doesn't reflect your potential. But the truth is, your life does reflect your potential. It just also reflects your pattern. The routine you follow is the future you'll inherit. So it's not a question of whether you have a routine. Everyone does. The real question is whether your routine is serving you or stealing from you. Are your daily choices leading you toward the person you want to become, or pulling you further away? And that's something you don't need a year to answer. You can see it today. You can feel it in your energy, your clarity, your momentum. You can measure it in your progress or your lack of it, because the secret to your future isn't somewhere out there. It's already here, quietly unfolding in how you spend your next hour, and the hour after that, and the one after that. Success leaves clues, but so does failure. Every path leaves a trail. Every decision, every habit, every action is a footprint on the journey you're walking, whether you realize it or not. Success has a path, and so does failure. One leads upward, requiring effort, intention, and awareness. The other drifts downward, needing nothing more than inattention and delay. Most people are looking for secrets to success, but they miss the most obvious truth of all. It's not a secret. It leaves clues, and just as clearly, failure leaves a trail too. You can follow both, and you'll always end up at the destination they were pointing to from the start. It's a strange thing how clearly we can see this in others, but often not in ourselves. You watch someone eat poorly, ignore their health, never exercise, and then they get sick. And you think, of course, what did they expect? Or you see someone ignore their finances, live above their means, and avoid responsibility. And when the bills come crashing down, it's no surprise. But here's the challenge. Are you honest enough to see where you might be following the same trail? Because the road to failure doesn't always look dramatic. It doesn't always come with flashing lights and sirens. Sometimes it looks like silence, like coasting, like waiting for something to change without changing anything. Failure leaves subtle signs long before it becomes a disaster. It shows up when you stop listening to wise counsel, when you start believing you already know enough, when you begin justifying your bad habits instead of correcting them, when you surround yourself with people who encourage comfort instead of growth. It appears when you stop asking questions, when you stop evaluating your results, when you start blaming others for things you should be taking responsibility for. These are clues, and if you follow them long enough, you end up in a place you never meant to be. But there's another part of this. Failure isn't always a sudden fall. Sometimes it's just slow decay. You don't wake up broke, out of shape, or disconnected from your dreams in one day. You drift. One missed day, one bad decision, one excuse that becomes 2, then 10. Over time, the wrong patterns become normal, and what once would have alarmed you no longer even gets your attention. You normalize what should concern you. You justify what should be corrected, and that's how failure becomes your lifestyle, not just a moment. On the flip side, success also leaves a pattern, and that pattern is often visible in the people you admire most. Look closely. You'll notice things like consistency, humility, patience, and persistence. You'll see that they do things others avoid. They stay up when others quit. They prepare while others relax. They study while others complain. They build while others daydream. These aren't lucky breaks. They're deliberate choices repeated over time. And if you look carefully, you'll see their habits, their systems, their mindset. And you can learn from them if you're willing to be a student. But learning from success requires humility, because you can't just admire someone's results and ignore their routines. You can't want their lifestyle without being willing to embrace their level of discipline. Too many people look at successful individuals and say they're lucky, they had connections, they were born talented. But if you stop there, you miss the deeper truth. The real clue lies in their effort, in the hours they worked when no one was watching, in the sacrifices they made, in the consistency they maintained even when it was boring or difficult. Every successful person has faced struggle. They've had setbacks, moments of doubt, and seasons where nothing seemed to be working. But the clue is not that they avoided failure, it's that they didn't stop there. They used failure as information, not as identity. They treated mistakes as lessons, not as reasons to quit. That's the clue that matters most. Not how perfect their path was, but how persistent they were in following it. The problem for many people is that they want the reward without the process. They want the transformation without the discomfort. They want the victory without the battle, but life doesn't work like that. The clues to success are written in discipline, sacrifice, focus, and growth. And they're available to anyone who's willing to look for them. The reason most people don't find them isn't because they're hidden. It's because they're hard. And hard things are often avoided. Another clue left by both success and failure is association. Who are you around? What voices are influencing your thinking? What environments are you choosing? People who fail repeatedly often ignore the power of their surroundings. They stay close to those who bring them down, distract them, or feed their fears. On the other hand, those who succeed tend to be intentional. They seek mentors. They surround themselves with driven, forward, thinking individuals. They place themselves in situations that challenge them, even if it's uncomfortable. That's not an accident, that's a clue. Sometimes the clues are internal. How do you speak to yourself? What kind of self-talk do you allow? People heading toward failure often have a voice in their head that says, "I can't," "I'm not good enough," or "what's the point?" And they listen to it. They agree with it. They follow that thought down a road that eventually leads to giving up. But successful people hear those same thoughts and say, "That's not true." Or "Maybe I can't yet, but I can grow." That shift in inner dialogue is not just optimism, it's a clue. It's a strategy, and it changes the entire direction of a life. If you want to know where you're headed, just look at the clues. They're everywhere, in your thinking, in your actions, in your relationships, in your schedule, in your priorities. And if you don't like the direction you're going, you don't have to wait for the crash. You can adjust your course now, but only if you're honest enough to look at the trail you're leaving behind. Because whether it's success or failure, the future is never silent. It's always whispering through your daily choices, revealing where they will lead if you keep following them. The price of growth is paid up. Front growth is one of the most misunderstood concepts in life. Everyone wants to grow. Everyone says they're ready to level up, improve, expand, and evolve. But what many fail to understand is that growth doesn't happen in the wishing. It doesn't arrive by hoping. Growth is something you pay for in advance. There is a price, and that price must be paid before the reward ever shows up. You don't get to see the transformation before making the sacrifice. You don't get the harvest before you plant the seed, water the ground, and wait through the season. Growth demands investment long before it delivers return. Most people want the outcome without the process. They want the results, but they resist the routine. They want the celebration, but not the challenge. They want to stand on the mountaintop, but they avoid the uphill climb. But that's not how life works. Nature itself teaches this lesson. Before the tree rises, the roots must grow. Before the sunrise, there is darkness. Before the reward, there is effort. It's a principle built into the very design of life. And the people who win, who truly succeed in any meaningful way, are those who are willing to pay the price upfront in full without needing immediate proof that it will all work out. The problem is, the price of growth is often invisible to the outside world. No one sees you reading when you could be sleeping. No one sees the hours you spend alone working on your craft. No one sees the discipline required to say no to distractions, to delay gratification, to keep moving forward when the results are slow and the encouragement is rare. That's the price you pay in silence. That's the private cost behind every public achievement. But while the world may not see it, you do. And that's what makes it valuable. Growth also asks you to let go. To step into a better version of yourself, you have to say goodbye to the current one. You have to release habits that used to be comfortable. You have to distance yourself from relationships that no longer serve your vision. You have to outgrow beliefs that were once safe but now hold you back. And that kind of letting go doesn't come easy. It feels like loss. It feels like discomfort. It feels like confusion at times. But that's the currency. That's the price of becoming someone new. The old must make room for the new, and that exchange always costs something. One of the hardest things about growth is that you don't get to choose how long it takes. You might plant the seed today and not see any sign of life for months. You might start a new habit and feel like nothing is changing, but beneath the surface something is shifting. It always is. Growth is slow, it's silent, it's invisible before it's obvious. But only those who endure the early stages ever get to enjoy the fruit later. The impatient never get to see what their effort could have become, because they walk away too soon. They give up halfway through paying the price, and they forfeit the reward. And here's the truth most people don't want to admit. Growth is uncomfortable. That's why so many people avoid it. It challenges your ego. It exposes your weaknesses. It confronts your excuses. It brings up all the parts of yourself that are still underdeveloped and unrefined. But that discomfort isn't punishment, it's proof that you're stretching beyond your current limits. The people who grow the most are not those who have the easiest path. They're the ones who lean into the discomfort and let it teach them, shape them, and sharpen them. Growth requires sacrifice, and that sacrifice is rarely convenient. It asks for your evenings, your mornings, your attention, your energy. It asks you to turn off the noise, to delay the party, to skip the shortcut. It asks you to stand in the gap between where you are and where you want to be and keep walking forward, one disciplined step at a time. And the longer you walk, the clearer the reward becomes, not just in what you accomplish, but in who you become along the way. Because the greatest reward of growth is not the achievement itself, it's the transformation of character that occurs during the journey. There's another cost to growth that people don't talk about often. It can be lonely. When you decide to grow, to evolve, to break old patterns and reach for a higher standard, not everyone will understand. Some people will criticize you. Others will feel threatened by your progress. Some will try to pull you back into the familiar because your growth reminds them of their own stagnation. And that's another price you pay: the courage to keep growing even when it means standing apart, even when it means walking alone for a season, even when it means being misunderstood by those who are still stuck. But while the price of growth is high, the cost of staying the same is even higher. Stagnation is expensive. Regret is painful. Wasted potential is a burden that weighs heavier with every year. So, the real question is not whether growth is worth the price. It's whether you can afford the alternative. Because no matter what, you will pay. Either you pay the price of discipline, effort, and discomfort now, or you pay the price of regret, mediocrity, and missed opportunity later. The difference is when you pay and what you get in return. Growth requires full payment in advance, and you must pay with focus, with patience, and with the willingness to do the hard things when no one is clapping. The difference between a life fulfilled and a life regretted rarely comes down to one dramatic moment. It comes down to what we allow, what we repeat, and what we ignore. Neglect doesn't ruin your future overnight. It does it quietly, through small daily decisions that seem harmless at first. But those decisions compound, and one day they define who you've become. Discipline, on the other hand, is the bridge that carries you from intention to achievement. It's not glamorous, but it's powerful. It builds character, consistency, and confidence not just in what you do, but in who you are. Your future isn't shaped by chance, it's carved out by your daily routine. The way you show up, the habits you form, and the standards you live by will silently shape the life you wake up to 5 years from now. And in the midst of it all, both success and failure are constantly leaving behind evidence, clues, signs, patterns. You just have to be aware enough to see them, honest enough to face them, and disciplined enough to respond to them. The price of growth is never paid on credit. It's paid in advance with sacrifice, with consistency, and often in silence. But those who are willing to pay it, those who embrace the discomfort, who resist neglect, who choose discipline over ease, are the ones who build a future they don't have to recover from. So if you truly care about your future, avoid the mistake of waiting for it to fix itself. It won't. But if you take responsibility today, fully, intentionally, and with courage, then the future won't destroy you. It will reward you.